Before we watched TV shows and movies on Narcos, and even before Pablo Escobar's rise to fame, there was one man who was the ultimate narco. He lived the narco life of greed, money, and power, but found a way to reclaim his life and use his astonishing experiences to empower others to live a life of hope, meaning, and redemption. Welcome to the Narco Mindset Podcast, where Dr. Jorge Valdes shares his journey through life before and after the Medellin drug cartel, from torture and multiple prison sentences to how he refocused his life onto a path of principles learned as a narco. It's time to share that raw truth with you, right here on the Narco Mindset Podcast, with your host, Dr. Jorge Valdes.
Welcome to the Narco Mindset Podcast. I am Dr. Jorge Valdes, and I am here with my co-host, Anthony Petrucci. Anthony, before we get started with this podcast, I want the listeners to know that in the next episodes, which will be the next 3 episodes that we're going to do of the Narco Mindset Podcast, we're really going to go into depth into my life as I detailed in my first book, Coming Clean, The True Story of a Drug Lord. But for this episode, I want to begin by just letting the listener know pretty much basically a summary of who I was, but more important, who I am today. See, I came to America at the age of 10, a young immigrant boy in search of what I call the pseudo-American dream. But at the age of 17, I became the youngest employee in the Federal Reserve Bank of Miami. You know, worked full-time, went to University of Miami full-time. I was an honor student and really, if you look at the pictures in the book, a complete nerd. You know, I never did drugs, alcohol, straight shooter. But in 6 months, and this is what I believe is unique about my story and what we want to show the listener. In 6 months, I went from being that American dream, Anthony, to America's nightmare.
Jorge, it's intriguing to me that you were a founding member of the group that would come to be known as the Medellin drug cartel. Pablo Escobar was not even famous yet when you were the biggest cocaine drug lord in America. You were there at the start of the cocaine drug trade. Of course, you paid your debt to society and totally changed your life around. I mean, for God's sake, you even got a Ph.D., which is amazing. But what I think people should know about you is that you have so many stories to tell, so many lessons, and so many insights to share. I'm really excited about this podcast, and it's going to be great.
You know, Anthony, we're used to seeing all this television program, but no one really knows what is the story behind the story? How did the cocaine trade in America begin? You know, at the age of 20, I was part of a group that would eventually be labeled as the Medellin drug cartel. That's another thing I want to talk about later on and let the listeners know there was no Medellin drug cartel, but they're going to have to stay tuned for that. You know, I was making $1 million a month, sometimes $3 million a month before Pablo Escobar even became famous. When I joined this group of Colombian businessmen, cocaine was not even in the DEA radar. You know, our customers were the high society of America. And as I looked at all the money that I was making and all the luxuries that I was able to acquire and the power and the gorgeous women that I was dating, it just wasn't enough. Then, all of a sudden I thought, well, maybe $1 million a month is just not enough to make any man happy. So I made a deal with the Bolivian government. I was going to make $5 to $7 million a month, though nothing could happen to me. I thought that, I was invincible. When I told my godfather, Manny Garces, that I was going to be going to Bolivia and that I made this deal with the government, he was scared to death. But, I told Manuel nothing could happen to me. But I got in an airplane with all the cocaine, which, I'd never done in my life. I crash landed in the jungle of Panama. I was arrested and tortured for the next 30 days by General Manuel Noriega, who originally was working for us. Every time I went to the bathroom, Anthony, for the next 5 years, I bled. I was brought to the United States. I was charged with leading the largest drug conspiracy in the world, given the highest bond ever in history, $5 million. What was funny? I was just 23 years old. They sent me to prison for 15 years, served almost 6 years, had a blast in prison, went back to the same thing. Until one day I just decided it was enough. And then I walked away. Imagine my desperation before I walked away, that I knew that by walking away, I would be killed within 6 months. There was really not a very good retirement program in the cartel. But I did not care. I needed to change my life, and I did. 3 years later, after leaving the cartel, I was arrested again, forfeited millions of dollars, went back to prison, and not even having $1 to buy a candy bar. I spent 10 years altogether in prison, But upon my release, and this is what is unique, and this is hopefully what we're going to be sharing with the listeners, and hopefully give someone out there who thinks that their life is over because they made some horrific mistakes, or they're in a rut, or they just don't see no way out. When I was released, I remember the counselor saying to me, "Hey, George, stay here. You're a legend. Why do you want to ever go home? You got clothing, everybody admires you." But, I just felt that, hey, I could do much better. And my life was over by no means. Yeah, I would suffer the consequences of the choices I made, but the truth of the matter was they were not going to dictate my future. I went back to school, I got a Ph.D. and became one of 5 Hispanics in America with a Ph.D. in Bible. I wrote a bestseller, became an international speaker, and then when I realized I couldn't put 5 children or 6 children through college with my professor's salary, I started a company from scratch and built it into a multi-million-dollar international company. And then one day, I walked again because I just simply wanted to be a dad to my last 2 children. Today, Anthony, as you know, I dedicate my life to creating a better world for our youth. The future of humanity lies in the hands of our children. To help men be men again, to help fathers place family first, to love our spouses more than ourselves. This is my mission today.
It's amazing, Jorge, that you're even still alive, because didn't Pablo Escobar even try to assassinate you or have you assassinated?
Imagine, Anthony, that you get a call one day from a guy that you know is one of the worst assassins the cartel had. And out of respect for you, he tells you that he needs to tell you that he's there to exercise a contract to kill you. And so what do? Do you run? Do you escape? What do you hide? So I decided I was going to meet him, and I met him at a shopping center in Miami. Could that have been a setup? Were they trying to set me up and make it easy for me? The thing about it was, in life, when you have nothing to hide, and when you live the life of transparency and honesty, even in the world that I lived, you have nothing to fear. So I faced him head on, and later on in those 3 episodes, we're going to discuss in detail what happened.
In facing that adversity, I think so many people, our listeners, they face things in their own lives, difficulties. Can you talk about what this podcast, this Narco Mindset Podcast, is really all about, and what it's offering people?
Anthony, I'm very excited about the podcast because it's going to be it's going to be raw, it's going to be an honest conversation. Listeners will hear stories about me and the cartel that have never been told. You might have watched Narcos, American Made, Blow, but in Narco Mindset, you will hear the story that gave birth to those episodes. Stories from someone who was there when it all began. I'm not going to tell you what I read in Google. I will share with the listeners how I chased what I believed to be an American dream. I had women, I had power, money, wealth. And when I found the top of it, the zenith of it, what happened? What do you do when you get there and you realize there's just nothing there? Where do you go from there? How do you face that inner sense of corruption that's killing you inside? If people looked at me, everybody wanted to be like Dr. Valdes. And in reality, I just wanted to die. It is very critical for us to know that, yes, we are impacted by our past, but our future does not need to hold us in chains. Our goal here, Anthony, is for Narco Mindset, is to let everyone know who wants to hear the raw truth. Listeners who want to be challenged. Other listeners might just be fascinated with the entire drug culture and they just want to be entertained. I'm okay with that. But to be transparent, I need to be really, really clear. I don't tell the narco stories because I want to relive a horrid past. I tell those stories from my narco days to let my past enlighten my future, hopefully someone else's, to challenge me to be the person I want to be. It is not my mission to change anyone. My only mission is to let others see the real me, transparent, not politically correct, loud, but madly in love with Jesus while living in a real world. Anthony, we're all broken, frail, and full of shortcomings. But there is hope. There is redemption. There is love. I don't tell people what I stand against anymore. I tell them what I stand for. My stories are simply my stories, my journey. Anthony, I need you to challenge me with hard questions and comments. And we're going to let the listeners hear a true conversation, not scripted or vetted. What comes out of our mouth at that moment, I'm not talking from a textbook. I'm going to talk to you from my heart in a transparent and very raw manner. In Narco Mindset, we will engage hard subjects. I will always start first. I just believe, even in my narco days, when I gave one of my soldiers an order, I always went first. I never asked anyone to do something I was not willing to do myself. And that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to tell the stories. I'm going to tell the listeners about my struggles. I struggle with power, with money, marriage, pornography. We all struggle with the same issues, but how do we overcome them? I will share with the listeners what I did to overcome what was mindset then. What is my mindset during my last 20-year journey? We might be going through hell or know someone we care about who's going through hell. We're here to tell them that there is hope. Narco Mindset Podcast is hope. Your life is not ever over. No matter where you're at and what you're going through, you have the power to either exist or be a force for good. You have the power to change. You have the power to not stay right where you're at. I chose one day to not let my past dictate my future. Neither does our listeners need to. We're going to rip the cover off many of the lies that society tells you. Listen, I'm not politically correct, as you know. I am honest. I'm loyal. I'm transparent. I want the listeners to know that I give God all the credit for changing an atheist like I was and giving me a new life. But I still pay for my past, and rightfully so. I went through struggles in my marriage, almost divorced. But yet now I have the most amazing life with a woman for 23 years.
The one thing I hear, Jorge, a lot is that people fear being judged by others. What do you think about this?
Anthony, we live in a world where no one knows who anyone is. Why? Because we're wearing constantly different masks. We show others the person we want them to know, not the real us. If people knew the real us, we're afraid that they would judge us. And judgment is not the worst part of it. See, judgment is followed by condemnation. For me, the greatest pain was that secret sin, that secret struggle I could not share because I did not want to be judged. There came a time where all I wanted was for people to respect me as a scholar. But I realized one day that you will always remain in bondage when you have that hidden sin or the hidden secret that's eating you alive. So, like I did one day, I told the listener, we need to come clean with each other, our children, our friends. We need to find that safe place where we can deal with that hidden secret and be liberated.
There's something I want listeners to know. As co-host, I'll be inviting listeners to email me questions to ask you, Jorge. Listeners can contact me through our website, jorgevaldespphd.com. Jorge is spelled Jorge. The J is silent in Spanish. And also, listeners can join our mailing list to receive special offers and also VIP opportunities to ask questions and have exclusive online access to you, Jorge. So I'm really excited about that. And we are going to be diving deep into your life story in the first few episodes. So I urge everyone to tune in. You won't want to miss it.
If this podcast has been of interest to you, I hope you tune in on a regular basis. Tell your friends, subscribe to our page, to our social media. This podcast is my gift to America. I'm dedicated 100% to changing the world for good. Listen, at the age of 22, starting at 21, I created a world of horror. I created a criminal enterprise that at that time was considered the most powerful in the world. If I was able to do that at 22, imagine what we can do now. Every single one of us has the power to make a difference in the world. Every single one of us has the power to change the world. So I hope you will join me, and together we can change the world for good. One family, one child at a time. I want to give a special gift to the first 2,000 subscribers to the podcast. We're going to send you a PDF copy of my short edition of my book, Coming Clean, that details my life. So, again, let's change the world together. One family, one child at a time. God bless you, and see you again next week on the Narco Mindset Podcast.
We've come to the conclusion of this episode of the Narco Mindset Podcast, but your path towards hope, meaning, and redemption continues. For more information and resources to help you on your path towards finding a life built on integrity, honor, and truth, head to jorgevaldespphd.com and join our community. We appreciate you joining us for this episode and look forward to helping you find your turning point right here on the Narco Mindset Podcast.